Tonight, in an exclusive to The Story, for the first time since he took office, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein is answering questions about the Comey firing, the Russia investigation, and Special Counsel Robert Mueller. Our conversation begins, though, with another hot issue. Attorney General Jeff Sessions reinstating Get Tough policies on drugs and the people who traffic them. It's a whole new era at Justice.
Civil asset forfeiture is a key tool that helps law enforcement defund organized crime, takes back ill-gotten gains from them, and prevent new crimes from being committed.
So the policy, though, is not without controversy, which is exactly where we would begin with Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein. Watch. Deputy Attorney, thank you very much for being with us. I want to jump right in on the issue of civil forfeiture, which I know you're discussing. John Oliver recently sort of brought this issue on television, talking about a man who was pulled over and had $2,400 confiscated from him by the police. And I think for a lot of people, it's surprising to hear that this is a practice that happens often and that the police don't really need anything more than a good hunch that it might be drug money to take that money away and not give it back.
Yeah, that's actually a misrepresentation.
Okay.
A hunch is not enough. In order to seize property, police need probable cause. It's the same standard that police need to make an arrest. And when a decision is made to forfeit property federally, we conduct an independent review of the facts and circumstances. So we actually have a government lawyer, a federal government lawyer, review those facts and make a determination of whether or not that seizure was supported by probable cause.
What about when police just pull someone over and decide to seize a wallet, money in that situation? Is that all right?
Well, keep in mind that the federal government doesn't regulate all police conduct. What we're talking about here are cases where a decision is made that a federal forfeiture is appropriate. And so that issue only comes up when the police present this matter to a federal government agency and request their assistance in conducting a forfeiture. And if they want the federal government to forfeit that property, then we need to make our own determination about whether or not that seizure was supported by probable cause.
But an inspector general did an assessment of the Department of Justice and said that $28 billion had come into the coffers through those means, and that in some cases there was not any litigation, any charging that was related to those forfeitures.
I think that $28 billion is an accumulation of a lot of different forfeitures over an extended period of time. But in every case where the government forfeits property, a claimant, anybody who claims an interest in that property, has a right to object. Now, in most cases, no objection is made. That is, no claim is filed. And the reason why no claim is filed in most cases is because the evidence is overwhelming and people realize it's not going to be worth their effort to do that.
Understood. With regard to the issue of sentencing, Attorney General Sessions has said that he is reversing the policy of the Obama administration, that he wants to seek the most serious, readily provable offense, particularly with regard to drug offenses. What issues do you believe at the Department of Justice that will address or remedy?
Well, that policy of charging the most serious, readily provable offense has been the position of the Department of Justice since 1980. And in fact, that continued during the last administration. The only difference was in certain drug offenses, prosecutors were told not to charge mandatory minimum sentences unless certain criteria applied. Now, that policy change is going to empower our prosecutors. It's going to allow them to use those mandatory minimum penalties in appropriate cases to combat drug dealers. And we think that's particularly important now because we are facing an unprecedented surge in drug abuse. And that's reflected in the extraordinary increase in overdose deaths of Americans. 8 years ago, we lost about 36,000 Americans to drug overdose deaths. Last year, estimates are that 60,000 Americans lost their lives to drug overdoses. So what the Attorney General has said is that we need to provide our prosecutors and our police with all the tools that we can to help them combat that terrible, terrible scourge of drug abuse.
So what do you say to those who are critical of that and believe that it's going to fill our jails with low-level drug offenders, many of whom, if they had a lighter sentence, could get back to their life and rehabilitate and live a good life?
I think the important thing to keep in mind is that minor drug offenders and drug abusers typically are prosecuted locally by local prosecutors, by state prosecutors. Our federal cases normally are targeting higher-level drug dealers. Now, if there are drug dealers who are involved in organizations who we think may have information about higher-level dealers, who may be involved in violence, those folks may be targeted by our federal prosecutors. But recognize here the Attorney General is charging our U.S. attorneys throughout the country to use their discretion appropriately to make sure that we target the most significant drug dealers and the people who are fomenting violence in our communities.
Speaking of our U.S. attorneys across the country, they were all fired under this administration, and some have been critical, saying that you're not filling the spots quickly enough.
We're actually moving very quickly to fill those U.S. attorney spots, and I believe we're proceeding at a pace even faster than the last 3 administrations for which we have statistics. And so we are going to fill those spots very quickly. In the meantime, though, we do have interim U.S. attorneys. You know, it's almost always the case when a new administration comes in that most, if not all, U.S. attorneys leave, and we have career prosecutors who step up and serve as acting U.S. attorneys. So I've been in contact with those acting U.S. attorneys in all 93 districts, and I can assure you that they're doing the right thing. They're moving forward and enforcing the law and following our policies.